ran for Senate District 25, Senator Donna Campbell's district. I serve on the officials, the convention, Legislative Priorities Committee. I'm also the temporary chairman of the Platform and Resolutions Committee for the 2020 State Convention this summer, and we are very excited about that endeavor. I'd like to thank my two co-hosts of this town hall, Sue Piner, the chair of the Comal County Republican Party, and also Comal County is one of the most conservative counties in the state of Texas, and it's good to have her lead that party up. Under her leadership, we're going to go far. And Susan Narvaez, president of the New Braunfels Conservative Club, and Susan also ran for Congressional District 35 Congress a couple of years ago, and I was very pleased to be able to work with her on that campaign. Before we start this meeting, I'd like to open us up in prayer. Thank you, Lord, for the President Trump and Vice President Pence and our leaders who are looking out for the good of the people of the United States. Thank you, Lord, for the good things going on. People slowing down and families spending time together. Thank you for the pandemic for not being as bad as it could have been, but we grieve with the families who experienced loss. We pray for continued wisdom and direction on how to defeat this coronavirus. Lord, we ask for wisdom as we go back to work to be able to continue to provide for our families and to be the productive nation that we have been. Lord, we lift up this meeting tonight as we move. Amen. You know, it's my privilege to convey to you what I've experienced during James Dickey's time as the chairman. Under Chairman Dickey's leadership, the state party began to work in November 2018 to prepare our 2020 elections. We're on track despite the worst pandemic in history. The Republican Party of Texas ended 2019 with a record 4.4 million, and we head into the second quarter of 2020 with an unprecedented 4.7 million on hand. As a member of the SREC, I view the financial reports of our state party and have personally witnessed the growth of our party resources and funds under Chairman Dickey. I've also seen the importance Chairman Dickey has given Republican grassroots influence at the state legislature. He personally dedicated countless hours advocating to legislators for us and working towards getting bills supporting our platform passed. As soon as the pandemic started restricting gatherings, Chairman Dickey and the staff of the RPT expanded their already extensive battery of digital methods of voter registration and swiftly transitioned to electronic meetings so we would not lose any time on the work of the party. The RPT has been extremely helpful, providing guidance and answering questions promptly about rescheduling the Senate district and county conventions and holding postponed runoff elections. It is an additional incredible feat that we have been able to move the dates of our great Texas State Convention. It's the largest state convention in the United States. In working with Chairman Dickey, I found him to be very fair and patient in arbitrating between sides on controversial issues, an able administrator of a huge organization, a cool head, and an honest official. So, I'm pleased to be able to bring you the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, James Dickey, to fill you in on what the party is working on and to answer your questions. Chairman Dickey.
Wow, Mark, thank you for that incredibly kind introduction, and thank you for all you have done for the party. I mean, in addition to serving as SRC committee man for your district, you also stepped up and served as chairman in Bexar County when that was so desperately needed. Thank you for that. Thank you for Chairwoman Piner and for Susan Narvaez for being co-host tonight. Thank you for doing that. Karen, for all your amazing behind the scenes. And I see Yvonne. We got some of the team on tonight. That's fantastic. And Lanny, great. Good luck to you. And thank you to SVLE member Ken Mercer for being on. Yeah, it's a great group of people, and holy smokes, we got 57 people on Zoom. I'm sure we have people following also on Facebook and on YouTube, and I'm grateful for all of that. thank you all for joining, because this is a really important time. Mark was absolutely right about that. And it's great for us to get together and make sure that we don't lose any opportunity. You know, as chairman, I was usually traveling around Texas 4 to 5 days a week, often more, and putting thousands of miles on my car. I did over 100,000 miles since I've been chair, 375 events in 121 cities and towns. But to have all of that come to a screeching halt and then not be able to interface face to face with Republicans around the state, it's been a real change. That makes events like this and opportunities like this so much more wonderful. And I'm so grateful that you guys took the time to get an update on the party. You know, things are crazy with the pandemic, but our focus on November is intact. We are on track, and we are well on our way to accomplishing our mission, which is victory in November. And it's victory in November no matter what the Democrats throw at us, victory in November no matter what coronavirus throws at us. It is victory in November, period. This is an unprecedented time, and we face unprecedented challenges. But you know what? We will conquer as long as we are united. As President Trump says, we are all in this together. And so in that vein, I've been working to make sure to keep everybody informed. Our Texas Republican grassroots, it's our key to victory, making sure you are in the loop about our state conventions and our local conventions, the transitions we've had to make, and how we earlier this month to address two key issues that directly affect our entire grassroots. The first is the state convention date, and the second is our national convention delegate allocation method. So the first thing they did was vote to move the state convention in Houston from May 14th, 16th to July 16th, 18th. And then they also voted to allocate all of our 44 at-large delegates using the statewide allocation method we were already going to use for some of our stuff anyway, so that we didn't jeopardize any of our delegation strength to the national convention. This was really important. What this did was just go ahead and make official that all of our delegates were secured for President Trump before we get to convention. Both those votes have to be ratified at an in-person meeting of the SREC. On Monday, I called that meeting to be held this next Saturday, May 2nd. And so in the meantime, though, the SREC had already taken the steps they needed so we could proceed. And that was really, really important. And to give you a feel, I mean, first of all, it was an incredible feat that we were able to move the date of the state convention. The original contract for the Houston State Convention in May was signed before I became state party chair in June of 2017. Normally, we're having to work 3 years ahead of time. And so for us to be able to make a change a couple months ahead of time, when we only had a few-week window that we could even move to, it was truly miraculous, frankly. And then the team did a bang-up job so that we were able to make that change with no increased cost and no loss in meeting rooms or available space to either the RPT or any of our delegates. And that was really amazing. Great work by the whole team who did that. And the vote to move that convention date and delegate allocation, the challenge is that made us have to request a waiver from the Republican National Committee, because for obvious reasons, they won't allow, and they look very seriously on, any state party trying to change up how they set their delegates to the National Convention during an election year, right? Nobody wants somebody to come along later and rig the outcome in the middle of the election. So they have very strict rules that you can't make changes during the election year. So we had to ask for a waiver for that. And so we did. And we did it to avoid a really catastrophic penalty. And to give you a feel for what we're talking, our normal delegation is the second largest in the entire country. It's 155 delegates. The penalty, if they had not approved our plan to save our delegates, would have been to drop that 155 to 9. So we would have dropped down to the size of delegation of like Rhode Island. So this was a big, big deal. Fortunately, we did a lot of things right along the way. We were really careful about making sure we did that. And Dr. Robin Armstrong serves on that committee that got that approval. Now, it's a big committee, and certainly couldn't do it alone, but thanks to the work of our attorney, our executive director, the negotiations we did, talking to RNC Legal, we were able to work it out. So we were able to save our entire 155 delegates, which is just fantastic. Yeah. And so we're now ready. And that was a big win, but that's just the start of the road to convention. So we put together an emergency plan to figure out how to be able to postpone properly all the county conventions and Senate district conventions. And we have 287 county and Senate district conventions. And so I am so grateful to our Republican leadership, our county chairs, our SREC members, our temporary convention chairs, all over our great state. They complied with the local emergency declarations. And so they were either able to handle and hold their Senate district and county conventions on March 21st safely because they were under the 10-person threshold, or they met outside, or they did something else, or they adjourned their meetings for a later date so that those meetings would take place after May 15th, outside the CDC suspension window, outside the governor's order. So we had leaders of nearly 3, every single one of them. And as we go through this, now I've appointed a working group to figure out options and alternatives for our Senate district and county conventions, with focus on suggested systems they could use in place of in-person meetings if that becomes necessary, and how those systems might scale to our state convention as well. Our objective, don't get me wrong, our objective is to hold our local and state conventions in person if at all possible. But we're going to continue to look at the progress through this pandemic. We're going to continue to pay attention to the health and safety of the delegates and the laws and orders that come down. So we have steered the RPT and conventions through this pandemic, and we're going to continue to do so. But now let's talk about November. My number one priority for the Republican Party of Texas is to win for President Trump and to win for all of our Republicans in November. We have to remember the business of the party is to elect Republicans to office so that we can advance our principles. And we at the RPT are fully focused on winning for President Trump and everybody up and down the ballot. We are working around the clock to make sure we deliver those 38 precious electoral college votes that President Trump will need to become president, and that we protect and we win our majorities in Texas. We have to keep working together to win together in November. And I am grateful. I thank God that we had the vision and foresight to begin the march to victory in 2020 right after the 2018 election. If we had not spent every day since that election preparing for victory this November, we would be in a terrible position right now. But because we went to work in November 2018 to prepare for November 2020, we are right on track. Because of the vision and foresight we had and the hard work we put in, the Republican Party of Texas, as Mark told you, ended 2019 with a record 4.4 million. And to give you some perspective, before I became chair of the party, had never had that number be over $2 million. Last week, we reported for the first time ever, we hit a never before reached $4.8 million cash on hand. We are using that money, we have built up that money to be prepared for victory in November. And we are making the necessary adjustments. Yvonne can tell you, we have adjusted from in-person to phones and digital efforts. Training is continuing online. Hopefully you guys have been invited to online trainings. We are going to continue to work tirelessly to hit our milestones. In fact, Saturday, Easter Saturday, our RPT Victory team, we held a day of action. We had 185 people across this state make over 17,000 phone calls on that one day alone. And when you add to that the over 30,000 other phone calls we had done in the couple weeks around it, that means in less than 3 weeks we did over 50,000 phone calls. There is no grass growing here. We are going to deliver victory for President Trump and the Republicans up and down the ballot. So please join us in that mission. The easiest way you can get involved, if you haven't already, is to sign up for 10K for 10R. We're looking for 10,000 volunteers to help us register 10 new Republican Texas voters each. So 10,000, 10 new voters, that's 100,000 total. You can sign up by just going to our website, texasgop.org, fill out the form there, or you can text 10K, just like the race, 10K, text 10K to the phone number 72,000, 72000. You'll get a link to a form, fill out the form. We will mail you the names and phone numbers of 10 people that we are 90% sure are not yet registered to vote in Texas, and we are 90% sure are Republican. All you have to do is call them and ask if the Republican Party of Texas can mail them a voter registration form. And then you get us back those answers. We will follow up and take care of the rest from there. To the courthouse. We are firing on all pistons. We need your help. If there's ever anything you can think of that we need to know about, email me at jrdickey@texasgop.org. Right now, text 10K to 72,000. Sign up and help us register the voters we need to deliver the victory we must in election night. Now we'll open it up for questions. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I just saw that Vice Chair Alma Jackson is on, and Summer Wise, SREC member Summer Wise.
I'm on.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Alma.
Hello, everybody.
Wow, what a great turnout. Oh, and I see Chris Coons there from the Republican Women. Very cool. We've got so many great
And Sharon Hall.
friendly
Sharon
faces.
Hall is on up though.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So yeah, well, I was just saying, we got 69 wonderful people on. Kurt Nelson, the former Bexar County chair. We got great folks. Okay, I just got asked, could I please tell you again what the text number is? Yes, it is 72,000, 72000. And all you have to put in the body of the text is just 10K, 10K.
Chairman,
Yes,
what is the doing?
every county chair takes it seriously and has already been thinking about it. But I can tell you from personal experience as a former county chair in one of the urban counties, in the general election, we had to fill over 150 polling locations. And it was tough. It was hard to do that. So one of the things we put together as part of our voter defense initiative. So we had an election integrity group. We now refer to it as our voter defense initiative because every fraudulent vote is an assault. It is literally a disenfranchisement of a legitimate vote. And so in our voter defense initiative, we have three main priorities. The first priority is getting an election lawyer to teach election law around the state so that we've got trained, prepared lawyers ready and on call everywhere where we might need them during the election window. Second priority is that we're devoting a couple of full-time staffers at the RPT to help make sure we have at least 80% coverage of alternate judges in all of the Democrat-controlled precincts in the Democrat-controlled counties, so that we've got someone with authority and the right to be there, who can't be pushed away in every one of those polling locations. And as part of that, we'll be helping those county chairs recruit those alternate judges and the clerks for those locations. And then the third is to recruit and train poll watchers. and to have those available for the campaigns and the parties in November. And it's a big expansion, but this is an expansion of an effort we actually did last election. And it worked really well doing the training of the attorneys. In fact, the guy who we had training the attorneys is having his confirmation hearings right now to be on one of the federal elections commissioners. So he really knew his stuff. He's a really, really sharp guy. But we're already talking to folks about who can follow in his footsteps and expand that work. But yes, recruiting those alternate judges, those clerks, those poll watchers, that is so important that we're willing to devote full-time staff at the RPT to help augment the county chairs, especially in the areas where we're most concerned about Democrats. As I was saying, thank you to everybody. I should certainly say thank you, and thank you for that, Susan. Lori Granados has done a lot of help behind the scenes on that. Questions about poll watchers. How do you get training and where do you train? We are going to make sure you're subscribed to our email list at texasgop.org. Make sure you're signed up to that. As we get closer to the election, that'll be probably the last 90, 120 days. So around August, shortly after our convention, we will be, because the early voting starts 90 days after our convention. So we right after convention, we'll be, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we do some poll watcher training at convention while we've got so many great dedicated people there in one place.
Do we have a place to go on the website for phone banking training?
Yeah, so the phone banking training, when you first come to our website, there's a form for you to fill out to volunteer, and I think it starts you at 10K for 10R. But as soon as we do that, we can follow up with you on the phone banking as well.
Chairman Dickey, there was another question from Riker. He says, we are hearing a lot about Democrats wanting mail-in voting for the runoff. Is there any chance of that happening, or will the runoffs look like a normal runoff election?
Yeah, they started pushing for that the minute this coronavirus stuff hit. We had the weirdest conference call with them I've ever had, where we were trying to, ideally the government always wants, the state wants us to agree. They want the two parties to agree on how we'll move forward, and then they don't have any concerns about challenges and lawsuits and stuff like that. So we had a conference call with them, and their very first thing was not, hey, let's delay it a while. Their very first thing was, hey, let's go 100% mail-in ballots. And if you're worried about those ballots like being infected in any way, we could have them drop those mail-in ballots off at our office, and then we'll deliver them a few days later.
Chairman, I have a question that somebody texted me.
Oh, sorry. Let me wrap this up. We are fighting vigorously against mail-in ballots. And we're fighting vigorously against mail-in ballots because it's the number one way that there are errors and there's fraud. And we will not stand by and let Democrats push fraud and error on our voters. And I love that the president, the governor, and the attorney general are all on the same page on that. Yeah, sorry. What's the question?
Are you keeping in touch with all of these newly registered Republicans so that we can reach out to them in that 90-day period before each of the elections?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of good news on this front. I actually skipped right over this part. So, I said we got the 10K for 10R, and we're looking for 10,000 volunteers to each register 10 new Republican Texans. That's 100,000 total. I completely skipped over the fact that so far we've recruited 3,400 volunteers, and we have registered 80,170 new Texas Republicans as of the end of March. And when I say 80,170, we know their names. We know exactly who registered to vote, and we've confirmed they now show on the voter registration rolls, and they weren't there when we mailed them the form, and then after we mailed them the form, they got added on. And so we we have kept all of that info. Sorry, here we got some folks unmuted, so I'm going to unmute everybody by default. If you're in on the questions with me, go ahead and unmute yourself. But so we've got over 80,000 already registered. It's amazing, and our research has shown that on a nationwide basis, Republicans who are newly registered turn out at the next election at 86%, which is way higher than the normal turnout of a registered voter. So those people, we have their information. We will be following up with them, and we can count on them to turn out and help us make a difference in those urban, suburban districts, especially where we need to do the most advancements.
Okay, initially registered to vote in Texas.
Yeah, so first of all, welcome to Texas. We welcome every refugee from oppressive Democrat regimes all over the world, including California and New York. And so thanks, welcome here. And we definitely want to be sure to get you registered. And if you are not already, we will help make sure to get you registered to vote. The great thing is Texas does have voter ID. One of the reasons why the Democrats are pushing so hard for mail-in ballots is that's the only way you can vote without having to prove your ID. So it's not coincidental that that's what they're pushing for. So our laws are good, our provisions are good. We're just going to continue to fight to make sure that we don't let the Democrats keep up their tradition of disenfranchising people's votes. This time by stealing them through fraud and error.
Can I ask a question from here? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm Glessy from California.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you. Per experience in California, I have seen it at the DMV, local DMV offices, where they have had multiple people that were actually registering for California ID, but they were not citizens.
Yes. Okay. So we
how
actually
do you prevent that from happening here in Texas?
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you. Yes, we actually do have a plan for preventing that in Texas. There was a law passed in this most recent session that made it so the Secretary of State is supposed to double check the citizenship rolls on all existing registered voters. And our voter defense team that I told you we put together and they're already working, we actually had a senior person from the Secretary of State address that group, and he confirmed with us that they are actively checking the databases on non-citizens and making sure that our registered voters are actually citizens. So I'm so proud that we live in a state where they take that kind of thing seriously, and it is great. And again, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Jordan has a relatively long question. Steve, would you like to ask that question to the chairman, please?
Sure, thanks, Mark. So my questions are kind of tied together. They both have to deal with some of the issues with the convention with my age group. When I talk to various people about, hey, you can help out with the party, you can vote, you can go to these conventions, you can discuss things with committees. The main things I run into is, I have no idea what goes on there. I've never been able to see any of it because all that happens is televised, none of it's live anywhere. So they don't know what's going on. They're a little bit nervous about stepping into that pool. And then B, everything happens during time frames when you have to either be at work or you have to have childcare. So this year we had this sudden change in the schedule. My wife is actually going to come with me. She doesn't want to be delegate because she's a little bit nervous about that, but she's going to attend because we don't have to get childcare. It's going to be in the summer. So I don't know what the laws are about that. Are we allowed to move it to early June normally, and we just don't?
Yeah, actually, first of all, Steve, thank you for the question, and I'm glad that you guys want to get involved, and I think that's fantastic. The convention normally is in June. It got moved to May this time and back in 2016 because there was concern the RNC had moved the national convention to earlier, and we have to, by rule, we have to give them our delegate names. We used to. This time we got a waiver, so we don't have to this time. But we had to give them our delegate names 45 days in advance. And so when this convention was booked 3 years ago, they booked it for mid-May, fearing that they had to have it done by early June. And in fact, there was a deadline that was June 13th. So it was close. It was close, but they were. It's not normal that the convention is in May, and I know the 2022 one will be in June, and I know there were a lot of teachers and a lot of parents and a lot of other folks who were concerned about convention. But one of the other reasons why we typically have it Thursday through Saturday is ideally, worst case, we're only talking a couple of days off work for folks. So, but great question, thanks. Those of you who are in the San Antonio area, the Bexar County area, Yvonne is putting her contact info in there. If you'd like to get involved with jumping on the phone banking, send her an email or give her a call. She's a great person to work with, and she's on fire, and Bexar County's on fire. So I have no doubt you guys are going to do this. Giving shout outs to everybody I've seen that I recognize. How long does it take to get the voter registration? It varies a lot, and frankly, right now, everything takes longer. There are fewer state workers, working in the office buildings. There are fewer postal workers working on the postal stuff. I heard last week of a piece of mail that was mailed from Austin to Austin, and it took a week. Everything takes a little bit of time. And, this is one of those cases where, over and over again, we get proven that the conservative position is the right position, right? One of the best ways that the president and his team have been able to respond to all of this at the federal level, and the governor and his team have been able to respond to all of this at state level, are by cutting regulations that are just painfully obvious right now, are just in the way, that the cost benefit, that the perceived benefit of that regulation was not nearly as much as the actual cost right now is obvious it is. So our conservative principles over and over show to be the right thing. Well, the same goes for the RPT. We raised a lot of extra money last year, and it's always tempting to spend it, but we knew we needed to save it and have it ready for victory this year. Well, thank God we did, because nobody knew this was coming. We didn't know there was going to be a pandemic. We sure didn't know there'd be the biggest pandemic in a century and the strangest response we've seen in terms of, no one saw this coming. But thankfully, because we had been doing all the work and because we had prepared, because we already had 50 great people like Yvonne on staff, already working, and already trained and already on Red Dialer, because we already had Red Dialer, because it was already set up, because we already had the data behind the scenes, because we already had 10K for 10R going, because we already had 70,000 of those now 80,000 registrations done. Even though, our goal was 100,000 by October. We could have been coasting and going, we're only halfway there. We'll slow down when we get to 40 or 50,000. We can ramp up later. Thank God we didn't. We did a lot of hard work well in advance, and right now we are seeing the benefit of it. Our principles are right every time, and I am so grateful that we live them out at the Republican Party of Texas. That is absolutely what we're doing. Generally, the victory program, right? The victory chair usually is named in January or February of the election year, or at most late fall, before the election year, October, a year in advance. Well, I had named the victory chair early last year. We had already started raising money in victory. I talked about, we got $4.8 million right now. $2.5 million of that is just for victory. And victory is the general election effort to beat the Democrats, right? That's what that money is dedicated for. Well, before I became chair, that account had never even had $1 million in it. We started this year this quarter with $2.5 million in that account because we're ready for November at a rate we've never been ready for November before. And thank God we did, because there was no reason to know this was coming. Let's see. So we got another question. Has the 45-day rule for delegate notification been permanently changed? Well, yes and no. They actually had the RNC, and these are all Republican National Committee rule changes. I serve on the RNC, the National Committee man and the National Committee woman serve. There are 3 members, chair, committee man, committee woman, from all 50 states, plus the territories in DC. So total, there's 168 members on the RNC, and they vote on rules changes. Our delegates at our convention vote on rules changes. So to the extent we want to change that up, we're going to have to push for that at the national convention. And on the rules committee, we'll have 1 man and 1 woman serving on the rules committee at the national convention, and they would be the ones who would make the effort to do that. So, okay, Chris asks, what's our plan to rally volunteers in the urban areas, and what's Plan B for convention? Okay, wow, two great questions, Chris. Thanks. Okay, so first of all, what's our plan to rally volunteers in the urban areas? It is the same, only more, to rally volunteers for everywhere. So the first thing we did is we made volunteering really, really easy and impactful, right? It's wonderful to volunteer and know that what you're doing is making a difference. That's why 10K for 10R is so important. You know, in politics, there's a season for everything. So we talked about the fact that election workers is really just that last 90 days before the election when we need to be training and recruiting and putting in place election workers. In turnout in Texas, because we have a 2-week early voting period, the turnout window is about 5 weeks. So for the last 5 weeks of the election, you can go to people and go, hey, I know you said you would vote for the president. I know you said you would vote for Republicans. Please, 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 go vote the minute the polls open. And it'll be impactful if you do that in those last few weeks. If you did that, if you asked them, hey, be sure and turn out to vote, and you asked them a couple of months in advance, a bunch of them would forget by the time the polls open, right? So only that last 5 weeks does that really work. The last 5 months, that's when you talk to people that you don't yet know if they'll vote for you, and you're trying to persuade them to vote for you. You know, first step is show up and ask them for their vote. Hey, I'm a Republican. I'm voting for the president. Will you join me? Will you also vote for the president? And then maybe they say yes. Maybe they say not a chance. Maybe they say, I don't know. I need to know more. Well, that's impactful those last 5 months of the election. But you know what is impactful all of the time? Voter registration. Because nobody gets to vote if they're not registered. So you can register somebody to vote today, and it matters for the election. It matters for the primary runoff in July. It matters for the November election. It matters for the next city council and school board election, and it matters for the next election after that. So voter registration is super impactful, and it always matters. That's why we started with 10K for 10R last year, because it was really, really useful. So what's the first thing we did? We made it a really useful and impactful and easy way to volunteer. And we do that everywhere. Second thing we did, we are backing up all of the volunteer efforts with the biggest field team we've ever had. Now, Yvonne can tell you, we already have 50 people spread around Texas. Now, 50 people around Texas, that's not huge. But what it is, that is more than double already what we had in the last 2 elections combined at the peak. And our plan is to take that 50 and make it 280. And it would have been 280 by June if coronavirus hadn't gotten our way. but it's going to be 280. It's going to be 280 pretty soon. And Bexar County, you're going to have quite a few of those. Because we are not ceding any territory to anybody. I mean, one of the reasons why the Democrats only had 1,400 candidates on the primary in the entire state of Texas, 1,401. We had 3,106. And the reason why we did is because we were determined to challenge every incumbent Democrat we possibly could. And that included in all the urban and suburban areas. And so we have done that. So that's a great question. And then Plan B and convention, I'll come back to that one a little bit. Mark D'Orazio's got his hand up and he's the host. So I'll defer. Not only the governor's office and the secretary of state, but the attorney general. And I personally had conversations with him about this, and he talked about it on our teletown hall just last week. And by the way, if you guys are not listening in on the teletown halls, they are amazing. We did one 2 weeks ago with the lieutenant governor. We did one last week with the attorney general. We did one today with the chairman of the Railroad Commission, which, if you don't know, they're the ones who regulate oil and gas. And there's been a lot going on in oil and gas the last few years and the last couple of days. So that was amazing. Next week, it's Controller Glenn Hager. And the controller deals with the state's checkbook. So that's going to be an amazing call. Make sure, be signed up on our email list, find out about that, connect in with that. Today it was Chairman of the Railroad Commission, Commissioner Wayne Christian. He is amazing, does fantastic job, and it was so great having him on to talk about what's been going on in oil and gas. It was something else, and I'm so grateful to him for being on. But last week when we had the Attorney General on, he talked about work on prosecuting vote fraud. And as I said, the Secretary of State, we had a senior person over elections, because the Secretary of State's office deals with business filings, deals with foreign trade, and deals with elections, right? So elections is a big part of one of the, it's one of the three big parts of their duty, right? The person over all the elections part came and addressed our voter defense team, and they talked about the work they're doing on the front end to make sure that people don't get registered to vote, aren't registered to vote if they aren't eligible and if they're not citizens and so on. So we had that. The governor's office has already tried to help with that kind of thing, but the Attorney General, when he first started, he had one person prosecuting vote fraud. He doubled that to 2 in his first term and has already done 4 times as much vote fraud prosecution as anybody else had. And he doubled the staff again now. So he's got a great team ready and willing and able to prosecute the vote fraud when proven. And it's tough to prove, but they are willing to do the effort to make sure it gets proven so that we can deter. And then we're going to do the work on the front end with the poll watchers and the alternate judges and the judges and our voter registration efforts. We're doing a lot of work on the front end to help deal with it on that end. Yes, Lori.
Summer has a question from Facebook for you, Chairman.
Okay.
Go ahead, Summer.
Chairman, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being here and having the town hall. We got a question from Mark Metzger. And he was asking about our platform. And when we hold our convention in July, the grassroots will come together to define our party's platform. How can we translate that platform into policy and help our elected leaders to follow through and deliver on our principles and our planks and our priorities that are so important to Republicans, especially to the grassroots?
Absolutely. Well, that's been a major desire of mine. Most people don't remember because it's easy to get used to the new normal. In the 2017 regular session, the party only showed up and testified on 2 bills, period. This last session, the 2019 regular session, we testified 300 times. And that's how you make it matter. And it worked. We had 100 bills passed that were directly relevant to a plank in our platform, and we directly addressed 49 of our platform planks. Now, you can look at that and go, okay, well, but we had 300 platform planks. 49 is not that many, except when you start breaking them down, over 100 of them don't have anything to do with state issues. They have something to do with federal issues or otherwise, right? And others aren't necessarily directly law related. And so 49 of those planks getting directly addressed and taken care of in that legislative session, that's not nothing, and did not get accomplished. What did get accomplished for the first time ever is not a dime of taxpayer money going to Planned Parenthood anymore. We had a legislative priority for religious liberty. We did not get everything we wanted on religious liberty, but we did protect the rights of pastors and churches to express their deeply held religious beliefs and to practice according to it. We didn't get constitutional carry, but we did get disaster care. And personally, I live in an unincorporated part of Travis County on purpose because I don't want to be part of the incorporated part. And for the first time in Texas history, taxing entities cannot annex you or your neighbors without a vote of you and your neighbors. That's a big deal. And one of our other legislative priorities, ending taxpayer-funded lobbying, we did not get that. What we did get was mandatory reporting, retroactive, and automatically triggered as part of public information requests for all taxpayer-funded lobbying in the whole state. And we already know that that reporting is already causing drops in taxpayer-funded lobbying, which is exactly what we were going for. So we know how to make it matter more. And I'll tell you, how do I know it's mattering more? I'm now getting calls and I'm now having conversations with elected officials where they are saying, boy, I wish the platform said X. I would love it if you guys were able to help me get past this one. Those are not conversations that organically happened the first year I was on the job. And so that going through that session, making those changes, it really, really did make a difference. Super excited about that. Let's see. I was looking to see if there was a paragraph here. I was looking to see if there was a question that I could do. There's a comment at the end. Media continuously denies that voter fraud exists. Yes, media does deny that. Media also just takes Democrat press releases and just runs them as if they're the whole story. You know what? We're conservatives. We deal with it. We control what we can control and not what we can't. That's one of the things that make the president so impactful is he just goes right by the media. Not everybody has that kind of reach, but we have been able to do that more and more, which is why we do more of this. It's why we do the teletown halls. We have really started to do that, and we've started to have more reach in the press. And it has been my pleasure to push back in the press. I love it. It's fantastic. Any other questions on Facebook or anywhere else? Well, guys, this has been a wonderful evening. Seeing so many friends. I mean, we had 69 people on Zoom, plus all the people on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you all for taking some of your precious time. Thank you for caring about the party and wanting to make a difference. Text 10K to 72,000. Reach out to Yvonne. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Be part of what we're doing. We are going to win in November, and it is going to be sweet, sweet victory from the White House to the courthouse. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. Thank you very much for your valuable time, and thank you everyone for participating. Y'all have just stepped up, and I appreciate it. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.